The Jewish Week on JN1.
Like so many coastal communities in New York, Long Beach was decimated by Hurricane Sandy. It's been nearly 10 months since the storm hit, and for synagogues in the area, the scars are still plain to see. With no access to government funding, restoration is painstakingly slow. The wind and rain may be reminiscent of the storm that decimated this coastline nearly a year ago, but a 4-block stretch of the Long Beach boardwalk is back open. There is still much to be done, but government funding is helping this seaside town pick up the pieces. However, for places of worship like Temple Israel, there has been no cash injection. With government funding deemed unconstitutional, this synagogue is relying on insurance, donations and volunteers. They say they're not the only ones struggling.
Many synagogues, churches, nonprofits throughout our area are suffering tremendously and really in dire need of that government assistance.
When Sandy hit, Temple Israel's basement flooded with over 6 feet of water. It climbed up to 12 feet in places. Sandy's visit is still visible on some of the walls. Rabbi David Bauman says around $5 million worth of damage was done, and power was only restored to the building in January. With the temple's basement still firmly out of action, he says it's not just the area's Jewish population that is affected.
We help people out in a variety of ways, and I think not only this synagogue, but all religious institutions should have the opportunity to access funds.
Under current laws regarding FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, places of worship can get funding, but only for the specific non-sectarian services they might provide. Temple Israel may offer some civic services like AA meetings, but FEMA will currently not help rebuild a place of worship. It's because of the First Amendment pledge to separate church and state. Temple Israel President Bruce Glover recognizes the importance of separating church and state, but thinks that after a disaster like Sandy, exceptions should be made.
We're not looking to build the Taj Mahal here. You know, we just want to restore basic services.
It may seem unfair that many religious institutions are tackling the Sandy recovery alone, but many believe it is vital to keep the distinction between church and state clear.
There to protect the taxpayer so that a taxpayer doesn't have to pay to build a church or house of worship that they don't support. But it's also there to protect the house of worship because it prevents entanglement with the house of worship and the government.
While some organizations argue exceptions have been made in the past, such as rebuilding churches after the Oklahoma City bombing, there has been no such exemption for Sandy relief. In February, a bill passed the House of Representatives to allow a FEMA grant to reach religious institutions, but it has since stalled in the Senate. Restorations such as this part of the boardwalk show that a degree of normality is returning to Long Beach after the storm. But for institutions like Temple Israel, it could still be a long road to recovery. William Denslow for JN1 in Long Beach, New York.